Hello gorgeous peeps, this is Chris from TechSpert and I'm here with two of the best gaming phones to be launched in 2018. Admittedly, two of the only gaming phones to be launched in 2018. The Black Shark, funded by Xiaomi, over here on the left, and the Razer Phone 2 over here on the right. We're going to do a full side-by-side comparison now to see how they stack up for hardware, software, and those gaming features as well. And for more comparisons of the latest and greatest mobile tech, don't forget to poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now first of all, stick these phones side by side, and unsurprising for a gaming phone, or pretty much any phone these days, they're both rather big. The Black Shark is a 6-inch beast, whereas the Razer Phone 2 is only a 5.7-inch display, but despite that it's got some nice tasty thick bezels above and below that display to really help bulk it out. So as you can see there, it's quite a handful. It's also not particularly comfortable to wield one-handed as well, thanks to these rather sharp corners. They kind of dig into your palms. There's not much relief there, that's for sure. As here on the Black Shark, it's more or less the same height and same width as well, but it's a bit more comfortable to clutch thanks to those nice curvaceous edges. It doesn't jab quite so nastily into your hand. However, the Black Shark does also have fairly thick bezels above and below the display. It's good to see no notch action on either of these devices though. That's quite a rarity as we're approaching 2019. Here on the Black Shark, you actually get a fingerprint sensor built into this bottom bezel just beneath the display. In the case of the Razer Phone 2, the fingerprint sensor is actually mounted on the side of the device, just like those old Sony phones, and it just fits neatly under your thumb when you pick up the handset. So again, unlocking is a nice, comfortable action. On both of these phones, it's a nice, fast, responsive sensor. You actually have to push the button in the Razer Phone 2, you just have to tap your thumb in the case of the Black Shark, but as you can see, once you do so, nice and nippy straight into your desktops. Now flip them both around and you'll see that the Black Shark sports a very different design to the Razer Phone 2. As you can see, it's an all metal finish, quite clearly a gaming smartphone. You're not going to mistake it for anything else with all of these crazy curves and angles. And although it's made of metal, you do actually get a fair bit of grip thanks to this sort of mottled finish as well, so it won't slip out of your grip. In the case of the Razer Phone 2, it's got this glass backing. Of course, you can pick it up in this glossy mirror finish, and it's also going to be available in a satin matte finish as well. And of course, you get a bit of RGB logo action on both the Black Shark and the Razer Phone 2 as well, and they can be used to flash when you get any notifications. The customization is rather basic on the Black Shark. As you can see, you can basically set up for the notifications, incoming calls, and you can turn the light effects on or off, and that's basically your whack. Whereas here on the Razer Phone 2, you get the Chroma app, and you can actually fully customize the effect that you have, the actual color of the logo. You've got low, medium, and high settings as well. All kinds of customization in there to suit your own mood. And before we get off the design, it's also worth pointing out that the Razer Phone 2 is IP67 rated for dust and water resistant. That means you can give it a good old dunking in some liquid, absolutely fine. It'll be fine if you drop it in a swimming pool, as long as you don't leave it in there too long. Obviously, don't just wander off and have a few martinis or anything. The case of the Black Shark, you don't get any IP rating water resistance. It's absolutely fine if you're using it in the rain, things like that, but we'd recommend definitely not giving it a dunking. When it comes to the display tech, they're both quite spacious of course, but Black Shark has a bigger display at 6 inches compared with the 5.7-inch Razer Phone 2. The Razer Phone 2 boasts a sharper display overall. It's a Quad HD Plus 2560 by 1440 compared with a Full HD Plus 2160 by 1080 here on the Black Shark. All the same, stick them side by side, and you know what, the Black Shark actually does itself proud. Nice fine crisp details in your photos, and when you're streaming a bit of Netflix and things like that, it looks pretty much just as crisp as the Razer Phone 2. I've got them both on natural colour mode at the moment. As you can see, those colours are looking absolutely fine, nothing artificial or sickly looking. Of course, when you dive on into menus, you will notice that the Black Shark has nice crisp, clean whites. Here on the Razer Phone 2, it's definitely a warmer image that gets put off, so you can see a bit of a yellow tint to the white menu. And if you dive on into the display section on both these smartphones, you get the option of play around with the colours to get exactly the kind of output that suits your own eyeballs. So I really like to have the Black Shark in the cinema mode. I think those colours and everything look absolutely stunning on this level. So if you go back into that previous picture, you'll see the likes of the greens and stuff really shine. If you were to put the Razer Phone 2 into vivid mode and then go back into that picture, you'll see that some of those oranges and pinks, they look a little bit too sickly sweet, and the likes of the greens aren't quite boosted to the same sort of level as the Black Shark. But if you tend to go for the boosted option instead, the output is much nicer. It's definitely more on a par with the Black Shark when it's set to that level. Of course, the one killer display feature that the Razer Phone 2 boasts that you don't get on the Black Shark is the refresh rate. It goes all the way up to 120 Hertz. It's not on that level by default, but once you stick it on, you'll notice that something like skipping through menus, things like that, so slick, very, very smooth indeed. Certainly, compared with the Black Shark, there is a clear difference. You'll see there, it's just so super smooth, it's crazy. Of course, there aren't many games that actually support that ultra motion display. In fact, there's only roughly 100 or so, which you can find if you go on the Razer website. So stuff like Alto's Adventure, for instance, that supports it. Although, to be honest, again, playing Alto side by side on the Black Shark and the Razer Phone 2, I kind of struggled to notice any real difference. It still looks silky smooth here on the Black Shark as well. When it comes to the audio output, the Razer Phone 2 is definitely the better of the two. It's got quite thick speaker grills, as you can see above and below the display there, and they pump out quite a decent quality audio. It's actually got a surprising amount of bass in it. I still wouldn't recommend listening to music on the thing, but it's absolutely fine for gaming, watching a bit of movies on the go, things like that. You do get a stereo speaker set up here on the Black Shark as well, and again, it's perfectly fine for gaming and watching movies and things, but not quite the same level of audio quality as the Razer Phone 2. If you dive on into the sound settings as well, you will notice, of course, that the Razer Phone 2 has full Dolby Atmos support, something you don't get here on the Black Shark. And while neither smartphone has a 3.5mm headphone jack for connecting your wired phones, you do get a little dongle bundled with both of these phones in order to get connected. In the case of the Razer Phone 2, that actually includes a 24-bit DAC as well, so the audio quality is absolutely fantastic. So what about the actual software? Well, both of these gaming phones are running a bit of stock Android. As you can see, it's Android version 8.1.0 in both cases, so we're still waiting for an update to Android Pie. The general Android experience is basically the same, but here on the Razer Phone 2, you get the Nova Prime overlay. This launcher adds even more customization features to Android, absolutely tons of them in fact. So you can completely change up the look and feel of the desktop, your apps, your folders. There are so many options in here, plenty of gesture support and things like that as well. It's absolutely stunning. Go check out my full tips and tricks guide for the Nova Prime launcher if you want to look at some of those features in depth. Here on the Black Shark, it is stock Android, but you do also get the Shark Space feature as well, which is basically a gaming related interface. As soon as you jump into this, you'll see that your memory gets freed up and all incoming messages and calls, things like that, are blocked. So you won't get any pesky notifications popping up and ruining your gaming experience. You've got fast access to all of your games from here. You can check out gaming stats. And when you actually load up a game as well, you've also got fast access to various gaming features just by flicking down on that fingerprint sensor. As you can see, you've got fast toggles to the likes of your Wi-Fi network. You can toggle the notifications stuff. You can make sure that you don't accidentally long press on that fingerprint sensor and take you back to the home screen so you won't accidentally exit your game. There's lots of great stuff packed away in there. And of course you get a nice bit of performance boost as well when needed. You get something similar over here on the Razer Phone 2. It's not a full-on dedicated interface, but you've got this Razer Cortex app, and that basically, again, gives you fast access to all of your games, and you can also toggle the settings. So you can quickly jump, for instance, between the power saver mode and the performance mode, depending on which game you're playing, or you can tweak all of the individual games to get them set up exactly how you want, including the frame rate to take full support of that 120 Hz screen. And once again, of course, you've got a do not disturb mode as well to block any notifications while you're gaming. Now, of course, it's kind of important for a gaming phone to pack pretty solid performance, and there's no worries on either of these handsets there. The Black Shark and the Razer Phone 2 both boast Qualcomm's Snapdragon 845 chipset for premium performance. You get 8 gigs RAM as standard on the Razer Phone 2, and you get a choice of 6 or 8 here on the Black Shark. This is the 8GB model. If we jump on into Geekbench, you will weirdly notice a big discrepancy between the two smartphones when it comes to their multi-core score. That's despite the fact that they've got the exact same chipset and the exact same amount of RAM as well. This is why I don't entirely trust benchmarking programs, because sometimes they can throw up some quite random results. The good news is that both these smartphones will play PUBG Mobile on top detail settings, absolutely no worries. There's definitely no worries for any of your gaming needs. I've actually done an in-depth look at the PUBG prowess of both the Razer Phone 2 and the Black Shark, so go check out those videos if you want to see PUBG Mobile in action. And speaking of PUBG, the Black Shark does also boast that bundled joypad accessory, which is absolutely fantastic for any kind of fast-paced action game. Just slap it on when you need it. It's connected via Bluetooth to the smartphone. It is powered up by Type-C USB, exactly the same as the handset as well, conveniently. And it just adds an extra bit of physical tactile controls, which you are missing sadly on the Razer Phone 2. If you want a similar sort of experience on that, you'll have to buy a separate joypad. So definitely a big thumbs up to Black Shark for bundling that in the box. As for battery life, it's a 4000 mAh cell on both the Black Shark and the Razer Phone 2. And the good news is that I can get up to 5 hours of PUBG gaming on the Razer Phone 2 from a full charge, up to 6 hours of gaming on the Black Shark. So either way, you're pretty much covered for a rather lax work day. You do get full quick charge support as well. It's Qualcomm's Quick Charge 3.0 here on the Black Shark, and it's actually 4.0 plus here on the Razer Phone 2, so it charges up slightly faster than the Black Shark. And you also get full wireless charging support as well with the Razer, so that's pretty nifty if that's your bag. And of course you've got the usual battery saver modes and everything as well. And of course, as you saw before, you can jump into a sort of a power over performance mode here using the Razer Cortex. And don't worry if you are going to be doing a lot of gaming in one big session, because both these smartphones support a cooling system as well. You get a bit of liquid cooling here on the Black Shark, and you get a vapor chamber cooling over here on the Razer Phone 2. Both smartphones basically do a fantastic job of dissipating that heat, so notice that the Black Shark gets a little bit warm after a couple of hours of gaming, but certainly not super toasty or anything like that. As for the storage space, you get 64 gigs as standard here on the Razer Phone 2. On the Black Shark, you get a choice of either 64 or 128 gigs, but the Black Shark does not support micro SD memory cards, whereas the Razer Phone 2 does. All of which brings us onto the camera tech. So obviously cameras slightly sort of secondary to the performance and battery life and everything else on a gaming phone, but still quite important if it's going to be your full-time personal handset. In both cases you get a dual lens shooter. Here on the Razer Phone 2 it's a 12 megapixel primary lens f1.75 with optical image stabilization built in, and that's exactly the same as the Black Shark's primary lens. As for the secondary lens, here on the Razer Phone 2 you get another 12 megapixel lens, f2.6, and it's a telephoto lens adding a 2x optical zoom. Over here on the Black Shark it's a slightly boosted 20 megapixel secondary lens, that's an f1.75 again just like the primary lens, and again you get a 2x optical zoom. If you actually jump on into the camera app, you'll see you're straight into your photo auto mode as you would expect. You can take a quick snap, just a quick tap of that shutter button, nice and nippy. Of course got all the toggles you would expect, like HDR for instance. You do actually get an AI scene recognition mode here on the Black Shark as well, of Xiaomi's own making. You get a portrait mode which works quite nicely on both of these blowers, just latches onto your subject, keeps them nice and sharp while blurring out the background. You've also got the various panorama modes and everything as well, and if you jump into video you can shoot up to full HD or 4K resolution footage. I'd be careful of that 4K resolution though, I wouldn't move around too much because the image stabilization in both of these handsets frankly is a bit crap. I found that on full auto mode the results are kind of a mixed bag with both the Black Shark and the Razer Phone 2. As long as the lighting conditions are fine, no worries, but in HDR situations frankly you ain't gonna get a good looking result. And those evening snaps again kinda limited, quite grainy, not great. And if you flip around to the front facing cameras as well, it's a 20 megapixel snapper here in the case of the Black Shark, f2.2 I believe it is, and it's an 8 megapixel f2.0 here on the Razer Phone 2. You do have a portrait mode that you can use on both of these blowers with that front facing camera. Of course it's just a single lens which just uses a bit of software smarts, as you can see, to latch onto someone's face and then basically keep them sharp while again blurring the background. And you got the usual beauty modes and stuff as well, not that I need that at all, right kiddies? So that right there is how the Black Shark and the Razer Phone 2 in a nutshell stack up. As I said, they're both great gaming handsets. They've got plenty of solid gaming features in there. Definitely prefer the Black Shark's bundled joypad as well. That definitely helps out a lot with the likes of the PUBG. Slightly better battery life from the Black Shark as well, despite the fact it's got the same size battery as the Razer Phone 2. You get solid performance, great looking screen. The Razer Phone 2 does have a few little bonuses, such as that IP67 water resistance, of course. And the vapor chamber cooling system seems a little bit more effective than the liquid coolant here on the Black Shark. However, of course, there is the subject of price. And the Razer Phone 2 costs from £779 here in the UK, which is frankly nuts. Meanwhile, the Black Shark costs £439, which is much more respectable, more in line with the likes of the Honor smartphones and of course the OnePlus. Frankly, considering you get that bundled joypad as well, stunning value for money. So which do you think is the best gaming smartphone right now as we head into 2019? Is it the Black Shark or the Razer Phone 2? It'll be great to hear your thoughts. Definitely leave them down in the comments below. And don't forget, for more comparisons of the latest and greatest mobile tech, to poke, subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers!